See this man? Actually, you're looking at a being not bound to such a simple, primitive title. He's an enlightened mystic, capable of power far beyond your imagination. I heard a story about him, that he once intelligently used his all-knowing and infinitely reaching abilities to peer into the future of the anime industry and take advantage of upcoming trends. He fearlessly looked far into the unknown ether and came across the spring 2070 anime season. There, he saw 50 nearly identical light novel adaptations produced by A1 Pictures and its many new subsidiaries such as A2 Pictures, A3 Pictures, A4 Pictures. It just keeps going like the 9 circles of hell. Continuing down, he noticed a few JC staff light novel adaptations that all look exactly like A1's, but with tiny tsundere lollies voiced by Rieku Miya, and paying these no mind and scrolling to the bottom of the chart. Studio Dean, the only other anime studio to not get snuffed out by A1's constant stream of bullshit, and made another season of Shogun Roku Rakugo Shinju, and it appeared on the lists of only 10 MAL users. The being, his name Kotaro Ishidate, scoffed at this prospect. "Pfft, we're fucked," he said, and he, along with his sidekick Sota Sugahara, went on to create their magnum opus, Good Fairies, hoping to steer the anime industry in a bold, new direction to avoid the horrific fate he foresaw, even though he knew it was probably futile. And everyone cried in happiness. The end. If you've been watching anime for a while now, you've probably seen enough to the point where you'd be able to slot every show into a specific category. If you're willing to venture a bit, and somehow haven't been graced with his brilliance, Kotaro Ishidate's work fills an extremely distinct niche within the anime landscape that you would be hard-pressed to find elsewhere outside of the Peeping Life series. For those of you who don't know Ishidate's style, let me catch you up to speed by explaining how an episode of one of his shows plays out, in this case by way of Good Fairies. The episode begins with a mildly strange scene of multiple fairy characters with remarkably different personalities talking about something random. Then they step into this other realm where they can materialize anything they want, which sometimes includes cannonballing over a bunch of old men. Then you reach a certain point late into the episode where you horrifically realize that the craziness doesn't stop there. The fairies come over to this portal thing, watch an absolute mindfuck of a sequence, and they start talking over one another, and wait, are they ad-libbing? Then the episode ends and you wonder what the fuck you just watched before being hit with a random, curiously blatant reference to a popular anime series. Well, that was fucking mental. What kind of anime was that nonsensical, plotless, low-budget piece of garbage? This Ishidate guy must be smoking the dank, am I right? Actually, it turns out creating a comparably insane piece of work in a medium that already doesn't follow the rules very closely is a feat only possible for a madman who is somehow simultaneously able to control his massive brain. I say this because this show is genuinely good. Even despite the fact it was animated with MMD, it had some real effort put into it, just in ways you might not immediately notice because it's so bizarre and unconventional, and that's one of the most striking aspects of this guy's work. The format of the segments is open-ended, which is genius because they always keep viewers on their toes when it comes to their preconceived notions of what they thought was the pinnacle of absurdity, and it somehow consistently capitalizes on this, with no skit leaving me without a dumbfounded expression for at least a little bit. I think it helps that the setting and characters are styled like a show for little girls, but this is juxtaposed against Gmod-esque nightmare fuel, further exemplifying how comfortable it is with the label of mindfuck. However, I especially want to commend the voice actresses and the direction they were given. Not only do they have extremely good material to work with, probably thanks to this twisted psychopath's mind, they always try to stay true to their characters even while ad-libbing, which is pretty impressive when considering that they simultaneously spin these unique tales from the absurd footage they're given. Even though sometimes you can feel the character and the actress splitting apart.
お分かりいただけただろうか。ダメだ。ネタの前に私声優としてダメだ。来週から CV 変わってるかもしれない。Although, I don't believe things get too out of hand, because a show occasionally calling attention to its own unreality seems natural when it looks like this, and has characters that browse channels from different dimensions. And so, I suppose I should craft my own tale from this absurd footage I've been given. I'm curious as to how often the actresses juggle their actual reactions with what they perceive their characters' reactions to be.
and how much of an impact that has on the improv. Even though it's funny imagining how loudly they're internally screaming at the massive bizarre fuckery, I commend them for getting so attuned to the show's weirdness to be able to put on such a convincing performance. But at the same time, maybe that's part of the idea of the Portal segment, to troll them, trying to get them to mess up by way of some Lovecraftian-esque freakout that they're expected to respond to. They craft a surprisingly relatable set of emotions through this, because I can completely understand how the actresses feel during every segment. I've never seen a show able to evoke such a surreal state of mind in me where I can't shake the feeling that everything I've done up until now has been wrong, but I'm willing to stare into abstract horror and accept the mind-bending perversion of the senses for what it is, even to the point where I might say, I love it. And if you don't think Ishidate was laughing his ass off at the effects this monstrosity would no doubt cause, you're sorely mistaken. There's irony and dry wit mixed in the show's DNA, and it existing at all in itself could be considered funny. It's a good anime precisely because it's not restraining itself to the conventions of regular anime comedies, so in order to fully appreciate it, you should likewise not come in expecting it to be a certain way. After all, genius can emerge in the face of chaos when it's controlled correctly, and this is an idea thoroughly embraced by good fairies. But you know, what if I want unrestrained chaos, madness everywhere, no holds barred? Well, I'd rather not talk about that one yet, but for something along those lines, we're gonna need to take a look at the much less drug-trippy series, Tesagure-bukatsumono. I love the concept of this show. If you don't get it, the idea is to put up a farce that it's an anime when the whole point is just to make fun of anime in a style similar to Japanese variety shows. It has the typical 4 cute girls in a high school club, but also some of the most blatantly self-aware jokes I've ever seen. Just watch the opening, where it feels like they're checking off from the list of how to make an anime OP, and you'll get a solid idea of what I'm talking about. Just like Good Fairies, the cast of Tesagure were given characters with simple personality templates, but since the ad-libbed sections are given more prominence, they go a little insane with them, and this can result in some equally bizarrely interesting dynamics. There's more of an emphasis on character expressions in Tesagure, probably because of the more lifelike character models, as well as the lack of still frames thanks to CG, and this shift has a number of intriguing effects on the improv, most notably how instead of the typical method of recording dialogue after the storyboards are complete, the Tesagure staff did it backwards, retrofitting the actress's emotions onto the characters. I feel like there is a reasonable amount of effort put into this, so I'd like to imagine that they recorded the dialogue sessions on camera and tried to recreate the conversations as well as some of their movements, but they also may have done so with just the audio, which isn't as fun to visualize. This process is rather fascinating, not only in how it illustrates how disconnected it is from modern anime, but also how the show is essentially an animated podcast, with specific topics, shifting personality dynamics, occasional spontaneous ridiculousness, and everything. In this way, if I had to say what my favorite thing about the show is, it would be how certain attributes are sometimes naturally ascribed to a character in the unscripted scenes, and that becomes a recurring point that the other characters will occasionally notice or make fun of at opportune times until it eventually becomes an established in-joke, in a way that reminds me of a Skype or Discord group call, or the aforementioned podcast. Sometimes these running jokes will be so ingrained into the identity of the character during the ad-lib sections that they're written in as a canon part of their personality. The best example being Yayoi's actress often resorting to puns, and the final episode scripted sequence mentioning this. While this could be seen as an innovative form of character development, I feel like the unscripted scenes are so vital to the show's content that even minor running character gags are essentially canon, even if they aren't called attention to in the script. Like Koharu's love for hot guys, which is a joke I honestly don't even remember the origin of. There were even some interesting considerations with regards to the characters each actress was assigned. Koharu's actress seems to have a much darker personality than her cheery template. Aoi's actress is an idol who probably wanted to be given the ability to make dirty jokes and say off-kilter edgy things and get away with it. Hina's actress apparently has very small breasts and is the most easily aggravated of the four despite her caricature being the calm one. And Yua's actress seems the most prone to cracking under pressure, despite her character being the leader. Maybe this was just a happy accident, or a convenient yet meta way of fleshing out a character beyond the scripted scenes, but no matter what they were going for, I think this is what truly makes the show special. And I could even take it a few steps further and say that Tesagure is a subversion of the typical cute girl show. Seriously, think about it. The structure of the episodes goes like this. These girls with seemingly one generic personality trait talk about a topic on a fairly baseline level, albeit with an anime slant, and afterwards is a segment where the actresses take over with far more naturalistic, unhinged conversations relating to that topic, suddenly reminding you that there are people capable of a wider range of emotions behind those caricatures. And as the series evolves, their base personalities prove increasingly flimsy and malleable to the point where the actual characters are, essentially, the actresses. It may slot into the category of cute girl anime, but if anything, this should be a testament to how meaningless of a descriptor moe is. Even the staff seems to be aware of just how much they're towing the lines between real life and what everyone assumes this word means. It was even stated by the producer that the actresses got together to have some bonding time before the recording sessions, because they believe the intimacy of the cast lends itself to better conversations. And this attention to the human aspect of the people involved actually paid off in a big way, since you can feel how close and playful they are with each other. The quality has nothing to do with character consistency, it's about conversations that evoke genuine fun just because the actresses are having a blast talking with each other, forging a bond that pierces through the concept of a scripted narrative. So when the final episode's tear-jerking scene happens, it's not just about what these characters went through, but the fun and memorable experience of the anime production that the actresses probably won't ever forget. And there's few other slice-of-life anime putting something on display that's quite as beautiful as that. It's stuff like this that makes me wonder just how far this medium can be pushed and what kind of new experiences can be created by stepping a bit outside of what's considered normal. I'm not trying to make a grand statement about something I don't have a vast amount of knowledge on, but I feel anime don't give voice actors enough credit, or at the very least, the competitive industry de-incentivizes experimentation with performances. Good anime voice actors often state that they attempt to immerse themselves in the script and block out the world around them in order to deliver the best performances they can muster. So there's something pleasant and relaxing about the way Tesagure's cast is treated. Like the show is a refuge from the stress that can be induced by deadly serious acting roles that would otherwise expect certain things from them, which can really limit an actor's creative potential by forcing them into a mindset that they must always deliver a great performance. When I believe there's more to being a great voice actor than just boiling the practice down to a formula and repeating it over and over again. They need to challenge their talents, and in order for this to happen, they need to be put into new and interesting situations, where they might need to adapt, which could possibly expand the horizons of what they're capable of. Since it's generally discouraging to be forced to work with cliched, embarrassing lines that they're not always willing to get fully invested in, why not allow them to take part in conversations that play out however they want? I'm not saying that anime should always try to force themselves to include unscripted lines, or that diligently reading every line in a script correctly is wrong. Far from it, but maybe there could be a little leeway for them to at least attempt to contribute something original, because you never know just how much of a grasp they might have on the material to add that extra little bit of spice. While this methodology could add to dramatic shows with some restraint, in the case of self-aware comedies, where abusing the meaningless meta-jokes is common, I wish it wasn't considered abnormal to communicate that even the actresses are aware of the dumb stuff they say. I distinctly remember how Koharu's actress was the most prone to screwing up joke deliveries, or generally saying unfunny things during unscripted scenes, and there was one part in particular where she completely blew it, and Yayoi's actress told her, "You know, Koharu, you have this skill that turns even the funny things into something unfunny," and I lost my shit to this line. You don't even need to go out of your way to create this helpful extra layer of irony. In the case of Yayoi's actress, it was completely natural, and as an active audience member who knew that this statement was most likely on the minds of all the actresses in previous episodes, I thought the spur-of-the-moment jab was on point, and that's what makes it so uniquely funny, because it's an insult that obviously extends beyond the character she's referring to. A scripted comedy would have to intentionally make a character be unfunny in order to call something like this out, which doesn't lend itself to convincing me that they're funny anyway, as much as this live competition of who can think of the most hilarious things off the top of their heads, or even jokes falling flat, can be made an entertaining spectacle due to the unexpectedly brilliant way natural conversations can play out. And many other anime fail to take advantage of this brand of chaos that can lend them an even stronger sense of self-awareness. This is also beneficial in propping up the scripted meta-skits at the beginning of every episode. If they were placed in any other show, I would get very annoyed very quickly, but here, I find them mildly endearing because the point of Tesagure is to make fun of anime, while cynically embracing the tangible elements of a popular style of anime. while simultaneously giving the actresses a platform to discuss how ridiculous the entire medium, and by extension the show they're a part of, really is, which could be considered extra genius because a lot of comedy shows have stupid meta-gags, so their presence in Tesagure could be seen as another form of self-aware pandering, almost like the staff is making fun of people who expect the show to just be shallow anime meta-jokes when it's more about embracing the idea that it's barely anime at all, by focusing on the actresses rambling about topics that sort of arbitrarily relate to anime just because that's what the audience expects. Ugh, the meta is making my head hurt. As a result of its more free-form nature, however, Tesagure is a lot more reliant on Japanese cultural jokes, so unless you find the right sub-team, or are willing to pause episodes to Google every now and then, it's not as easy to get into as his other work. However, I think the payoff is worth it. Overall, I think I might actually like Tesagure a little more than Good Fairies. It's always refreshing to watch a show that is so good at being meta that its own existence is a joke at the entire medium's expense, and it often plays with this joke in clever ways, like this one part in the second season where the staff decides to abuse stills and reuse footage instead of the usual fare because the viewers wouldn't care anyway, since people who would watch this far are probably in on the joke that it's very fundamentally different from normal anime already. They know their audience, and this allows them to take these jabs at the anime industry without any repercussions against the quality of their own show. Then you get to the ridiculous antics of the third season, where the actresses actually play ping pong and a variation of Cards Against Humanity together, as well as take place in a Danganronpa-styled version of the werewolf party game, crossed with a Yuri anime parody, and they also go on location to various places, such as a haunted house, with specific experiences being reenacted alongside their legitimate live reactions, which is the closest I've come to believing that an anime is anything but what I'm seeing on screen. This was a spin-off for a reason, as an excuse to maximize its self-indulgence and tear down any semblance of this being similar to a regular anime, and I wouldn't want it any other way. I don't think it would be a stretch to say that this man is an insane person, and if you somehow don't believe me at this point, you'll be struck with awe when looking at Minarai Diva. I'm certain that if there's ever a book of world records that relates to anime, the show would. It should be in it, because it's the first live anime ever produced. You heard me correctly. The show played out in real time using 3D motion capture technology, as well as assistance from MMD, and was streamed on Nico Nico Doga and one or two TV networks. The point is to have the viewers tweet song lyrics and have these two divas debate over what they'll use and sing the concoction at the end of every episode. I'm assuming, at least, because I was barely able to sit through one episode on 2x speed, and I think only 3 got subbed because of the monstrous 45-minute episode length and copious amount of Japanese text on screen. While a novel idea that makes me think about the possibilities of interactive anime as well as a potential live Tesagure-esque show, this first experiment ended up an absolute mess where the entire thing is just these two poor women attempting to entertain without a script, and bare bones, sometimes non-functional visuals, for nearly 40 minutes. And the song, well... let's just say, it goes over about as well as Twitch plays Dark Souls. Getting the job done, but doing it about as well as a paralyzed man with Down syndrome. Before continuing down his epic tale of triumphs, Ishidate was actually involved in the production of 2 less successful anime in between the release of Good Fairies and Tesagure, those being Robot Anime Straight Title and Boku no Imoto wa Osaka Okan. Actually, I lied, there was also Backstage Idol Story, which while I was able to find the first episode, I couldn't get the subbed version. From the synopsis and what I saw with my almost non-existent Japanese comprehension, it seems to be about an actual idol group talking about raunchy things, and then this bizarre ad-libbed skit with a paper cutout for some reason. I wish I could better appreciate what the show is going for. It actually seems like it could be fun, but I guess I'll have to skip out on talking about this one. Robot anime, seemingly inspired, or at the very least coincidentally similar to, the 2008 Walt Disney-produced CGI anime Fireball, where the plot is some kind of war, but the show actually focuses on random idle conversations between robot characters. There's also kind of a resemblance between the character designs, I guess. I don't know. Robot anime isn't that funny, so I didn't watch the whole thing. But it is interesting in that it shows how he's steadfast with his style no matter what genre it's attached to. Osaka Okan is apparently based on an old Japanese book that teaches how to deal with family members from Osaka, but this invaluable knowledge has been updated for the modern anime viewer. Now there's a show about how to deal with a little sister constantly blabbing about Osakan culture, which is a pretty funny jab at the numerous Ore-emo clones because it's such a stupid, pointless concept that the idea got remade in this way shows how ridiculously out of hand this trend could get. I'm certainly sick of it, but that doesn't have much to do with me dropping Osaka Okan. It was actually because I didn't find references to a culture I've never experienced funny. But yeah, it's interesting that they exist, and these shows make me think about what compels him to be involved with anime like this. He seemingly drifts from one crazy idea to the next, and discards all logic in regards to how appealing their content is. But is it possible he's a madman with a mission? There's actually kind of a sensical through line connecting his work if you think about it. They all exploit genres and conventions in some way, utilize some form of CG, and seem to be shooting to resemble regular TV or otherwise blur the lines between it and anime. However, I want to see if I can figure him out a little better, psychoanalyze the depths of this bastard's madness, and this'll probably require some research. Although his shows don't have much of a budget, that alone can't equate to him being able to work on 3 seasons of Tesagure and these myriad other shows. The most probable reason for this might surprise you. The first season of Tesagure sold pretty well, averaging about 3,000 Blu-rays per volume. Actually, even Good Fairies was successful, although it's hard to find the exact numbers on this, so I'm not 100% sure how well it did, but when factoring in its no budget, I'm guessing it probably made its money back and then some. So what does this mean? He worked on a barely successful yet adventurous project in Good Fairies, followed by 3 shows almost no one cared about, and then suddenly came out with a very standard-looking anime that seems to be intentionally catering to normal anime fans. Yep, it seems he did that. After Good Fairies did well, he tried a bunch of other wacky ideas, but none of them proved as fruitful, reminding him of the horrifically volatile nature of the industry, and so he went cynical, and whether intentionally or not, did the anime industry equivalent of clickbait to hook people into his unique style, which makes the Tesagure OP funnier and even more genius in retrospect. And his mindset seems to have worked. The second season of Tesagure sold very well, and the series is continuing to be successful. I suppose this shows one shouldn't underestimate the power of being transparent with regards to an anime's production, because he's cultivated a surprisingly devoted following of people invested in this kind of show, despite how unconventional of a watching experience it is, as well as how often viewers are reminded that their waifus actually have minds of their own. However, after the surprise hit Tesagure and its follow-up, he mysteriously resigned from his directorial position on the Tesagure spin-off team for unknown reasons as the show was airing. All he stated was, "Although I am a selfish person who likes to do things at my own pace, this is the first time that I have left a series as director midway through." Despite what I said about him adopting a cynical mindset with Tesagure, I don't think he left because he was tired of working on the series. He stated that he had a fondness for live comedy shows, and that he dreamed of producing one similar in style to what legendary Japanese comedian Kenichi Hagimoto did, and I think continuing to ride the Tesagure hype train could have eventually made him reach somewhere at least similar to that. At the very least, it seems like it would have been his best option. His leave most likely had to do with a production issue that will forever stay under wraps. Until today. After some digging around, I luckily found his personal blog, and I'm able to infer quite a few things from what he's written there. It's pretty much as I expected. So much so that it's actually kind of sad. He's been working in the entertainment industry for over 20 years, and in fact was once a comedian who had been involved with real variety shows. And he remarks how he didn't realize how blessed he was with how the production on those programs are handled. He called it maturely run, where there's a clear line between production and sales, allowing creatives to do whatever they wanted. In fact, there were business incentives to do so, and as a result, interference between producers and clients was kept to a minimum. On the other hand, he laments the way the far younger anime industry handles this, and in particular, the production committee. He states the people who work there often have no creative experience and only focus on minimizing risk, which, while excellent from a business point of view, is quite the opposite for creatives. Sparks fly more often, and this creates an obnoxious, difficult, annoying working environment. It makes sense. For what it is, Tesagure has a fairly large following, so taking risks becomes increasingly de-incentivized if you look at it from a business point of view, and that's just not Ishidate's style. He wants to make the work he wants to make, and do it however he wants. And he wishes the industry would create an environment that would better balance bringing someone's dream to fruition with producing favorable results. He finds it inconvenient to pander to consumers, while realizing it's probably what he has to do to be successful. Even still, he chooses to carve his own path and only work on things he enjoys. He even seems to acknowledge that he's immature in a certain sense because of this. But I think it's admirable that as he continues to drift along aimlessly, he sees everything as a learning experience, and so he's always growing as a person and attempting to improve his work. But even still, it's kind of depressing that he was booted off the Tesagure spin-off team in retrospect, because it finally seemed like he had found a perfect middle ground between appeasing consumers and doing what he wants. But eventually, the scale tipped in the direction of the side he was not favorable towards against his will. And it didn't help that he seems like someone who is both willing to take risks and strict in his direction, which is a deadly combo. He said it himself, he may be a person who is incompatible with most others. I get the sense that he may have even predicted how his relationship with Tesagure may have played out, judging by the number of posts he wrote that seemingly relate to his resignation, posted before the actual date it happened, and that he hoped it would be the one thing that would just resolve itself, and the fact it didn't just makes everything more sad. Following his leave, and judging by his decision to migrate back to Studio Bouncy, which he's actually the president of, Ishidate most likely intended to make a fresh start for himself, to create a masterpiece all in his own image. But this was interrupted by one of his friends calling him up and asking him to try out this cool new program they created just for him called Kigurumi Live Animator. And he said, fuck it. Sure. And using this upgraded technology and his prowess of making live anime, he conjured up Maho Shoujo Naria Girls, a less than stellar production. Fun fact, even Ishidate himself called the finished product crappy. I must say, the creation process behind the show is fascinatingly ambitious. The new motion capture technology Kila actually lets them change camera angles and prevents them from having to cut the live feed constantly like with Minarai Diva, and they used Xbox controllers to change the characters' expressions. The teamwork this took must have been pretty nuts, and this whole process makes me think about how much further anime can shift to the technology side of things, despite originally being a purely artistic medium. Like if maybe someday anime production will be boiled down to a science, and they'll come out on an assembly line. Ishidate also seemed to have a lot of fun in the creation process. Even though he called it crappy, he said it was a crappiness that grew on him. It's certainly good that he's enjoying himself again, but unfortunately, that doesn't change Naria Girls' status as a train wreck. It's an example of how badly Good Fairies or Tesagure could have turned out with no planning or direction. It has a premise, I guess, but it forgets to give the actresses anything to talk about, so they don't talk about anything and instead randomly ramble about stupid bullshit. It might actually be worse than what the actresses in Minarai Diva were able to accomplish, because at least there they had tweets to work off of. I suppose, if nothing else, this proves that seiyuu choices are just as important as giving them material to work with, because being naturally funny can help with a show that would really benefit from this. And I believe this would be a good time to commend the producer responsible for picking the casts of Ishidate's best shows, as they also had great chemistry both on a baseline and meta level. Now that he no longer has access to that producer, there seems to have been a lack of seiyuu consideration in Naria Girls' case, and this poor talent scouting probably contributed heavily to its downfall. That can't be all there is to it, though. Apparently, the version of Naria Girls pretty much everyone will see nowadays is edited footage from a live stream. It seems like there was some kind of viewer input in producing the TV version, but I'm not exactly sure how, aside from the production team reading comments. It's possible the users had input as to what segments were the funniest, and therefore which ones should be used in the final version. Ultimately, though, what this amounted to is taking the livestream footage, editing on some additional context, as in shitty-looking still images and a couple scripted lines, and an opening and ending song. And judging from what I was able to extrapolate out of the livestream footage, a lot of what the actresses talked about was stuff relating to the show itself. Actually, that seems to be the plot of the anime? Did Ishidate make this up after hitting the record button? I guess it's not too surprising that these ridiculously stupid excerpts were used, because it's probably the only material they could string in a sequence and have it remotely resemble a narrative. What's even more ridiculous, though, is that Ishidate couldn't afford an actual microphone for his seiyus to spew dumb crap on. I guess he's homeless after getting ousted from Tesagure, since it's almost as bad as my microphone. And as a creator of several pretty successful series, you'd think you would have at least $100 on hand to purchase a microphone with audio quality that's presentable. But maybe this is the inevitable lifestyle for someone who produces anime in this subgenre. Seeing how Ishidate, who lives in a cardboard box, is pretty much the only active contributor to it, and that the only thing Sota Sugahara has made recently is this worthless piece of garbage, it seems like the future is cloudy now that the chosen ones have fallen. In any case, they would have their work cut out for them trying to sway the current Western anime community, since they don't seem reticent to this kind of show, and it's disappointing to me how many volatile reactions and misunderstandings are aimed in this subgenre's direction. You'd think those who venture into the depths would have an open mind, but it more so seems like most dip their feet in the water and don't bother waiting a few seconds to let their bodies get used to the temperature, and judge what those depths are like based on that. It's not like I blame those who did this after watching Naria Girls, but I have a question for people who did. Did you watch it fully ready to accept how weird it might be, and whatever off-kilter ideas it might contain? Or did you watch it because it was on the seasonal anime chart, and it was unpopular and critically panned, so you wanted to see if it truly was as bad as the Mal score indicated, and have a laugh at how obviously inferior it is to Mob Psycho 100 or any other big show that season? The majority must fall under the second answer. I know, because Naria Girls has a couple YouTube videos dedicated to making fun of it, and has more reviews and is actually on more Mal profiles than Good Fairies, which is 6 years old now, back when seasonal anime watching wasn't as in vogue as it is now. As I subtly referenced in the beginning of this video, there's a strangely rampant need to categorize nowadays, but when considering that Tesagure occupies the slice of life genre, it's clear that these labels don't entirely define what an anime has to offer. And I think the same is true of the subgenre that I've called attention to as well. Anime doesn't evolve in a straight line. If it did, this horrific future would come true. Some branches can't exist, because it is a medium after all. And despite what looking at anime BD sales with a cynical mindset might tell you, not everything needs to be similar to the most popular shows, because this isn't often their intention anyway. It's what makes anime special. I think it's very important to remember that there are faces behind the shows you watch, and a part of what Ishidate is doing is bringing this fact out into the open. He desires to get as many people involved with his productions as possible, including viewers, whether directly or indirectly. I'm not telling you to like his work, but I think his attempts at bringing anime down to a more raw and human level, while still retaining what makes the medium special, deserve some appreciation. I still feel like there will always be this cultural stigma against CG animation, where some people will probably immediately dismiss shows like Tesagure, but CG definitely has its strengths, and Ishidate seeks to explore those strengths. The reason why Tesagure and his other shows were made with CG is because Ishidate believes it's best suited to something like an ad-libbed comedy, and he also stated that he thought trying to make a regular scripted anime using CG would inevitably be inferior to hand-drawn animation, so carving out a niche was his aim with the technology. Since CG is often poorly done with serious story-driven shows, due to the puppet master techniques required making it awkward in the scenes with a high level of movement, I do admit self-aware comedies are a great solution, because they sidestep ugly visuals being a heavy detriment as well as making use of the fact that it's cheap to produce. However, the recent hugely popular Kimono Friends would go on to challenge this notion. In fact, there's an entire interview dedicated to Ishidate's shocked reaction at the success of Kimono Friends, in which he states that he believed it achieved this status due to having an air of mystery similar to Madoka Magica, while the CG simultaneously lowered people's guards and expectations. He expresses that it opened his mind up a little bit, even though he said the actual reason it got popular is probably outside any of our comprehension. I wouldn't necessarily say Ishidate is entirely wrong with what he sees as the best way to make CG anime, and the way his style is evolving and could continue to evolve with better technology seems like it could be fascinating to keep an eye on, and now thanks to Kimono Friends, maybe he might even try to combine an actual plot with his ad-lib dialogue, finally bringing that Tesagure patented meta character development to a new level of meaning. Not all hope is lost, if our valiant hero can just get back on his feet. Although there are some innovations among popular anime, they mostly have to do with new artistic techniques. Massively upheaving its own foundation is an anime's strong suit. I'm aware that there are some comedies similar to stuff like Good Fairies in the West, but as far as anime goes, it seems like rigid structures and convention is the typical methodology, so it's exciting to see anime like this tampering with the formula and actually doing something interesting and potentially groundbreaking in the process. It's not only true that finding anime like Ishidate's work is difficult, but that finding anime with the same level of edge to them is difficult, and I mean this in the best way possible. Despite how ahead of the curve they are, these are shows that aren't really going against what anime stands for, but rather expanding the horizons of what the medium is capable of on many fronts, whether it be technological, structural, comedic, and so on. And for some of them to be legitimately good, and even prolific, I can't help but be impressed. And I'm interested in what other anime could learn from them, even if it's only hypothetical, since the subgenre needs to have more hits other than Good Fairies and Tesagure to attract attention. Ishidate might appear misguided and insane, but there's a little insanity in most anime, and by extension most of us. We need to take lessons from the man himself, embrace our insanity, throw caution to the wind, and remember that it never hurts to give something a shot. Unless it does.